Monishka, how had been your childhood? Like everything you enjoyed, your hobbies, and everything about you. Like how had been that childhood experience for you?
So I was born in Agra, where my dad was last posted. He was in the Air Force. So I think I spent about 4 years in Agra, which was the happiest part of my childhood. After which we shifted to Delhi, and I've been here ever since. I think my childhood was very disciplined, very regime oriented, because we had a sort of a mini military camp right at home. There was a lot of focus on being disciplined, on waking up on time, and especially the part where my dad always encouraged us to pursue extracurriculars along with academics. And I think the biggest part of my life has been going beyond just the obvious, just not focusing on academics, but also on sports. So my younger sibling and I think enrolled in Taekwondo when I was roughly about 8 or 9, and we practiced for about 12 years, 13 years. And I achieved the first degree in black belt in Taekwondo when I was 13. So, roughly in about 3 to 4 years, I was able to do that. And I think that has been my happiest achievement so far. Other than that, I think during school, there was a lot of involvement in quizzes, in debates, and in going for very short, brief jam sessions, which were a form of debate interactions. But I think within quizzing, I was a part of this show called Discover India with Anupam Kher. And I think my parents are really proud of that achievement because I happen to be on TV for quizzes and not because of something else. So I think they're really proud of that. But yeah, I think that's a lot about my schooling and my childhood.
What was your biggest
I really loved painting. So what I would do is we had those storybooks, those animated storybooks, and I would try to make Cinderella or Snow White or whatever I could get my hand on. So I really loved sketching and painting while growing up. Other than that, I think I would read a lot. I My poor eyesight is because I would read using a torch after bedtime. So there was a lot of reading happening. I think insane amount of reading happening now that I think about it.
like you tasking person? Like you do a lot of things. Apart from academics, you have done a lot.
There was always to not just stick to academics.
How had been your experience studying English literature in LSR, which is a deemed university for like many girls out there?
I I get that. And thank you for that. I think LSR, the 3 years in LSR have been quite a life turning moment for me because when you leave school, when you're in a school, you may not always feel very confident as a young woman growing up in India. I think schools in general tend to have a lot of mixed experiences for a lot of people, and I think that was the case with me. But LSR was a world apart. I think my was a person who has come out with some amazing, amazing, priceless bonds. So, yes, I think LSR in that way was extremely life turning.
Internship in college that you have told me even on the call that you have did a various internships in various fields and you are always like this internship that internship, so how had been that journey?
I think I started interning from the first semester of my college, and the intent of internship for other students, I think it is to grow and understand how corporates work, what to do, what to learn. For me, and I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but it was all about being financially independent because I wanted more pocket money, I wanted more stipend. So the idea was to start interning and start with something that I was familiar with and then eventually figure out what I wanted to do. So while the intent was to gain financial freedom, I am glad to say that I learned a lot of, I got to delve into a lot of fields. I dipped my fingers in a lot of cookie jars. I went from editing to marketing to human resources as well. So I think I did a little bit of everything, and which has finally led to me pursuing something professionally. And I think internships are a great way to understand what eventually is your knack. Because when you're in college and let's say you're pursuing X subject, you're bound to think that, okay, this is the way for me to go, this is a natural step for me to take. But when you actually start working in a field, you realize whether the work that you do, whether the field you are in, actually resonates with you or not. So I would definitely suggest every college student to, give internships a shot, and don't just do it for your CV, do it for a long-term goal, because career is a marathon, it's not a sprint. You don't just stop doing internships once you feel like your CV looks full enough. You do it till the time you figure out which field is decent enough for you to start with, and then you explore your way around.
Okay, I can relate with you like a lot. Like I have also started, I'm currently in my second semester and I have spent my whole first semester interning in two places.
Oh
As
God,
well as starting this. Like I can relate with you very well
I'm
with that.
so glad. I'm so glad.
Okay, so I ask you like what are the ways to get a internship in your first year, first semester itself? Like, what are the ways to grab an internship without even having? Actually, everybody has some skills, but without any significant skills.
Okay, so I'm not sure what the market looks like right now, but 6 years ago, we had this platform called Internshala, which I think is still existent.
Yeah, it's
And I think that really helped me a lot because the idea was to not just apply to 5 places in a day, it was to apply to X places in a day and eventually crack my way around it. So I initially started through Internshala, but from there on, I started making contacts, and then I would reach out to some of my contacts who would then refer me to elsewhere. So I think Internshala plus networking really helped me grow my portfolio in a way.
okay. As you said, networking. So, how do you actually network? Like when we are like in a first year, we are not really aware how to network with people. There are many people saying that we have to do networking, but nobody says that how to actually do networking, how to reach out to people. So, how you reached out to people?
Okay. So, as a college student, I know networking, the entire concept sounds very foreign, but how I did it is, and I'm an introvert by the way, so I really don't go around making friends. But for me, it always starts with your peers. So let's say I would forge an equation with my peer, and somehow I have always managed to make extroverted friends. I don't know how that happens, but it does happen. So the idea is to first connect with peers because that gives you a confidence in a foreign space. Now, once I started connecting with my peers, I was able to also be a little bit more confident during my conversations with my reporting manager in my internships. And the idea is to not present yourself as someone who you are not, because then that makes you awkward, that makes your manager awkward. But the idea is to find that one point, one value point, even not just a professional point, where you feel that you and your manager really resonate. When you network now, I feel like in today's times, people network for very transactional needs. But I feel that you should network with the intent of always having this particular individual in your radar throughout the life. Of course, if due to some reasons, the equation fades the kind of energy it initially had, that's okay. But when you start a networking equation with the intent of being transactional, it just limits the scope of your interaction with the person. So eventually, I started figuring out ways to resonate with my manager. Could be their college, could be food, could be their working style, but just something which I was also passionate about, and they also had a good deal to contribute towards. Now, once you form that kind of an equation, you can then proceed towards other kind of things. So even if my internship ended, I was always in touch with my manager. Now, my manager, who is let's say 8 years into the industry, will obviously have peers who are connected to them, and you obviously have to work really well during internships. You can't afford to slack off. So if my work was good, if I was able to create that impression through my work and my personality, then I would obviously reach out to my manager and say, hey, you know what, I had a great time working with you, but now I'm looking towards marketing gigs. Do you know of a person who would be interested to, hire me, or who would be able to get me on a short-term project? And that's why I started freelancing onto some work as well. So I think I freelanced as a question paper setter for some academic institution. So I think these are a lot of ways in which you can start networking at a college level student.
But if you connect with one person very well, then there are chances like multiple direction to you for go for.
Exactly. I think networking shouldn't be about, it shouldn't just be about putting all your eggs in one basket. Sorry, it shouldn't just be about putting all your eggs in different baskets. It should be about putting all your eggs in baskets that you are able to manage. So I'm not saying limit yourself to just one person, but limit yourself to people who you know you will be able to carry on long-term equations with. I'm very proud to say that I can actually, reach out to some of the folks I have worked with during college days, and I can ask them, how's it going? How are you doing? Do you think you can get me another gig if, I ever need it? So that should be the level of your equation during when it comes to networking.
What I understood from your conversation is that networking is a long going process. It's not about the transactional thing like you do for this for me, I'm doing this for you, we are networked. But it's
Yeah,
like a long term process. You have to check on them, like how are they doing, and it's a then not only it will be a fruitful thing.
exactly. I think you've got it down right to the T. Good analysis, good understanding.
From your achievement that you got into BCG, which is a dream for many people who are searching for job, like getting into Boston Consulting Group. That's a big achievement. So, what was the selection process exactly? How you actually prepared for that, and how you actually reached there?
Okay. So I graduated in July 2021 and I joined BCG about 6 months later. So I think the selection process, I'm in the organization and I still can't figure out what makes them pick someone and what makes someone's CV come their way and what pushes it aside. But I know what caught their attention. It was the 13 internships that I did, and it almost seemed outrageous to them, almost ridiculous. But I think it caught their eye because, among other things that I did, I was also able to project myself as someone who goes beyond the curriculum, who goes beyond literature. So while I was applying to BCG, it had just launched its pilot graduate trainee program for freshers like me who had up to a year's work experience. So I applied for the Human Resources Graduate Training Program. There was only one slot left. And I think about 3 weeks later, I got a call at 10:30 in the night, which again, if you are a normal person, you would think it's a spam call, but I would highly recommend pick up all your calls if you're applying for jobs. Even a 10:30 call could change your life. So I got a call from the recruiter saying that my CV had been shortlisted and I had a first round of interview. Now, I had 5 interviews for the position of a trainee, and all these interviews had varying levels of difficulties, varying levels of personality checks that were being conducted. I think one key takeaway for me from the interview was to be thorough with your CV and to be thorough with a lot of things that you have done till the point of the interview. Because my interview was not just limited to my technical expertise in human resources. My interviews were also questioning as to why I switched from science to literature in college to corporate as a full-time life plan. Apologies, I have a bad throat.
Sorry,
So,
fine, fine.
so the questions are not just limited to what you've done, but they will make you feel as if you've taken a wrong decision all your life. So the conviction has to be so much strong when you're presenting your answers that the other person should not feel that you've done something wrong. Because I was asked at a point that why should we hire someone who has worked in so many different fields, and that just makes me think that you don't know what you're doing with your life. And when you're being questioned this way in an interview for BCG, your first reaction is you will feel flushed, your face will grow warm, you will actually start doubting that what, this individual is right, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. But the key takeaway is to actually hold your ground. And I'm not saying this theoretically. I'm saying this because I've experienced this in my 45 minutes long chat with my interviewer. So don't just prepare for the job you're going for. You should also prepare for whatever you've done so far, because the interviewer will always be a step ahead of you in trying to test you and trying to, make you feel as if there's a lot more to be done to be achieved yet. So, yes, the 5 rounds of interview were about what I've done so far, what do I bring to the table, and how am I different from the 100 people or 700 people for that matter who had applied for the job. After 5 rounds, I got into BCG as a human resources graduate trainee, which was an 18-month long program. And thankfully and fortunately, by the good graces of God, I was able to convert myself into a permanent position within BCG as a part of the BCG Platinum team, which is, in shorter terms, the tech unit of BCG. We cater to the technological and advancement needs for our clients.
It's all about like clarifying everything you have done. Like you just don't have to stick with one thing. Like they will ask me about the they have to know about your whole personality, like what you have
Exactly.
did, and they will analyze this even everything, every single thing that you have even think
Definitely.
of.
Definitely. And I think one important tip for anyone who's preparing for consulting firms is, while I know you are going to prepare for case studies, you're going to prepare for any question they might ask you with respect to the domain you've applied for. I think please also be thorough with your profile. Nothing that is read out to you during the time of the interview should come as a surprise to you. You know, if your interview mentions that you have probably represented your college in so and so event, you shouldn't have that flash on your face. Oh, when did I do that? Be thorough with your CV. That's the first step, which I think a lot of the candidates sometimes miss out on.
Okay, so what advice would you give to someone who is just in a to they, if they want to get into BCG after 3 years? So what they can start from now to do like all.
Mm, I think, see, it again depends in the field you want to go into, because a firm like BCG is actually multidimensional. You have a lot of roles, you have a lot of functions. So it depends on the kind of role you're eventually targeting, which in my experience is extremely hard to figure out when you're in your second semester, because you're still growing and understanding. So I would suggest the first thing, don't target a company. Target, I think right now as a first year student, you have the space to explore. You have, the world is your oyster, as I always tell, freshers and undergraduate students, and I call them younglings sometimes. So the world is your oyster. You are free to explore whatever domain you want to. While BCG sounds like a lucrative option right now, when you from your first year of college, when you limit yourself to just BCG, you forget that there are other firms who are actually doing some amazing work. But just because you're so focused on getting into BCG or McKinsey or Bain, that you don't explore those places. So first, explore as much as you can. If you're doing marketing, go for HR. If you're doing HR, then try to upskill yourself in some other function so that you're able to intern eventually in that function. Because the idea is to not just keep interning, but to also keep upskilling. So if you're doing literature, I would say, and you're somehow clear that you don't want to pursue literature in the long run. So what do? You can't just stop studying, right? You've got to do other things. And I feel like certifications and courses, as much as they're undervalued right now because of the free access to them, they are not. Because let's say if, as a literature student, you do some course in marketing and that eventually lands you to a marketing internship, I think the course paid off. And once you intern as a marketing intern, you get to and if you are keen to build on that profile, then you're able to eventually land a job in marketing altogether. So I would say keep exploring and keep upskilling. And don't just stick to one thing. Don't just stick to the area you're studying. The world today is so resourceful. Internet has just made everything a way at one click. So keep learning something. If you have figured out what's not for you, keep figuring things out until you're able to come to an answer.